The Dan Williams Show continues now on WKAC.
Okay, we're back with Kenneth Pascal, Mark Davis with the Alabama Family Rights Association, and Dinah Rhodes, who's a family law attorney in Huntsville. And so the rest of the program is going to be for you three to...
I have one thing I want to mention, and then I'll let Kenneth go over some information he has. One of the real hot debating issues in the last couple of years about equal custody is where's the child going to live when school's going on? And our current legislation basically says that the child will maintain the school district that he or she was maintaining at the time of separation or at the time of filing the petition for divorce. And it's presumed that that's the school district that the child should live in. There's already a relocation statute on the books that if the child needs to relocate, that's a totally different legislation. It's already on the books, and then the court would use those factors if that became. So there's not going to be anything to where if a court orders equal custody to where the child's got to go to school in Birmingham one week and in Athens the next. And we feel like that addresses that fairly.
Yeah.
And so that issue's been taken care of, and then I'll let Kenneth go from here. So.
Okay. Well, we've been talking about the current law and how it operates, but I think it's very, very important we identify the impact on our kids. That's the most important thing. Is it's not about mom, it's not about dad. It's about the impact on our kids. How are we doing for our kids? I know we're number one in football, and I'm a Bama fan, so roll tide. But let's take a look at our kids here. We 45th out of 50 for as child well-being. We 4th out of the country in divorces. We're number 2 out of the country as far as domestic violence related to deaths. We number 7th out of 50 states for high school dropout rates. In fact, last year we had approximately 23,000 kids dropped out of high school. The research shows if just half would have completed high school, that's approximately $6.6 million just tax revenue the state would have benefited from. So that's the impact on our state as far as allowing the government, the courts to make parental decisions. And our position as an organization is that is not in the best interest of our future, which is our children. So the question is, what can we do differently? And that's why as the Alabama Family Rights Association, we do propose that our legislators amend the current custody laws. It's going to do a couple things. It's going to protect the parent-child relationship. It's going to provide a process where the parents can create a parenting plan. And that's a document, that's a resource available where the courts can utilize without even having a trial. They submit the parenting plan to the court. If they agree, the courts approve that agreement. If they disagree, that's another powerful document the courts now have where they can create a parenting plan that's with the least restricted means available to make sure a child have a continued loving, nurturing relationship with both parents. And once again, we have approximately 40,000 kids going through our courts every single year. So what's the benefit of this concept that this proposal we talk about? Well, the immediate benefit is it will clear up the dockets. Well, it will reduce the dockets. Our docket still is going to be full because we do have a major problem in Alabama as far as domestic violence and other criminal activity. And we think the court should hear those cases. We have kids right now still in homes where there is abuse, documentation of abuse. But the courts, these cases can't get before our courts because they full with fit parents fighting. So this kind of sums it up for us, saying what do we need to do? Everybody's familiar with the Newtown shooting that we had December last year. We went back and looked at the data from 1927 to 2012, and all the mass killings, not just with guns, but even with the Oklahoma bombing, all the mass killings had one common denominator with the predator. There was destruction in the home. Mom was not there, dad was not there. So it's imperative that we create a public policy that will encourage, not discourage, but will encourage a child to have a relationship with both parents. And divorce rates, I know a lot of people say, well, if the parents just get along. Well, that's not a criteria to protect the child's rights, fundamental rights to love mom and dad. The parents don't have to get along. Absent of harm or abuse, We need a state policy that says a child need a mom and dad, and then we need to make sure we have resources available in each county. So we have a drug court in every county. So why can't we have resources that promotes co-parenting classes? Why can't we have resources that promotes mediation by qualified people?
One thing that I like about, you're talking about the benefits of this, is the amendments to this section 30-3150 will immediately reduce the court's dockets. Being a member of the legislature, and y'all know too, the lack of money that the state has to provide the services with, and the court system have been cut quite a bit over the last 2 years. Not because people just want to cut the courts, but because the money is not there to fund everything. So anything, it looks to me, that would be beneficial to the child and both parents, and also at the same time reduce the cost of courts, should get a good look in the state legislature. At least it will from me, because I just think we're involved. What the party that I'm a member of, the Republican Party that controls the legislature, our thing is to make government more efficient, to make less government, and I agree with it. I think government at any level needs to back off from the parents and the children and the problems that they may have. I just don't think government's the answer to it.
2 or 3 years ago, I was in a courtroom where Dinah was practicing attorney. It was a 2-day trial, and at the end of the first day, I could see the court reporter and the judge with these long looks on their faces, and I myself was thinking, the stuff that's being argued, and Dinah wasn't arguing it, the opposing counsel was arguing it, but the stuff that was being brought up didn't really amount to anything. And it took all day and a part of the second day for a trial. And everybody in the courtroom, except the attorney arguing the point, knew that this is not even relevant. It's just a waste of judicial resources. And another thing too that I have found is Alabama does not require the trial court judge to list findings of fact. I'm of the opinion by the state not requiring that deprives the litigants of due process, because a judge can rule and not even explain why. If those litigants have the money to spend $10,000 to take it up on appeal, and they send it to the Court of Appeals in Montgomery, the Court of Appeals will review the evidence and they will list findings of fact. And so that's putting a burden on our appellate courts that they're having to review this Jerry Springer activity that really doesn't amount to anything, and then our appellate judges are having to list 12 or 30-page opinions on Jerry Springer. And if we get the facts and we get the parents putting these plans together and the courts listing findings of fact, I think it's going to make everything better for our judicial system.
We may have, Dinah, you may want to address this, but there may be a myth out there that when we're talking about divorce and not divorcing, I've heard a lot of people say, it'd be better for people to divorce than the friction and the animosity that goes on within a couple having problems bad on the kids. But it seems like divorcing can also have that same problem when the parents are not together. And I'm not sure that children are better off with divorced parents who both maybe fit and are in court fighting than they would be if those people were still at home together.
Right. I don't know the research on that, but there's just as much damage done in fighting over custody and visitation.
Maybe what I'm saying, that divorce is not always an answer to problems.
Right.
It is at some point, maybe, but.
And going back to what Mark was saying, I have never been divorced, but I cannot imagine being divorced and asking the judge to award me joint custody of my child, equal rights, and the judge saying no and not giving me any reason for it.
Yeah. Well, and people like me, I grew up with a good mother and daddy, both of them, and they never had any problem that we could see. They didn't fight in front. I'm sure they didn't always get along, but they were there, and we respected each one of them's role and everything. So it's very difficult for me to understand how any parent, regardless of what the situation is, that can't see their children freely, and even grandparents, it's just, it boggles my mind that people cannot see their children and have a relationship with them because someone's mad at them.
That's exactly right. There's a lot of ulterior motives that have nothing to do with the children or the children's welfare that people use to gain power or to gain revenge or for all kinds of reasons against their spouse.
Yeah. Well, I'm anxious to see in this session how a different approach, to rather than a very strong change that you've been pushing for years and going to a method where you would just change some of the existing things. That may be the way to do it. At least we'll find out.
Thank you for having us on, Dan.
Well, I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that, and May, I tell you what, I don't know when, how the legislative agenda will run everything. It's crazy down there, but maybe at some point when we see how the legislation is being accepted or not accepted or whatever, maybe you can come back during this session, even before we pass or something. We can discuss where it is and what it is. But anyway, I appreciate all of you coming. Dinah, we certainly do appreciate
Thank
you
you. I
coming.
enjoyed it. If it's, aside from the negative lawyer remarks.
Well, you're because of your name, you're one of my favorite
There you
lawyers.
go.
They just kind of piled every time they'd have something, they just pile it on her and leave it.
That's
So
right.
bless her heart.
Well, that's what are lawyers for, But we appreciate y'all coming, and I hope that our listeners do get a little bit of information out of this. This is it's a simple problem, but it is complicated, and the legislature makes it that way. I have to say that. But
Well, Dan, we definitely appreciate it. And if your listeners have comments, please go to our website and give us feedback
Sure.
because this is a team effort. We're all about family. And our website is alfra.org. Definitely thanks, Dan.
okay, we'll be back next week with another Dan Williams show.
You've been listening to The Dan Williams Show, brought to you by Witt's Barbecue, by Farmers Insurance Agent Ken Hanna, by Chick-fil-A, and by Jared Hester from Edward Jones. Join us again next week for another Dan Williams Show on 1080 WKAC.